All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fairly Accurate Podcast with Professor Mitchell. This is the aforementioned Professor Bradley Mitchell coming to you today to talk about Psych 101, Introduction to Psychology, exam number one. This is a quick review for those of you that are looking for a quick review. What you're seeing on your screen is the website, the Canvas website from Ivy Tech that has the announcements page where you can find this actual PDF, and then I've pulled up the PDF for you. I'm just briefly going to go over the questions really quickly because I've gotten some emails and there's just some clarification points that I want to make sure everybody is understanding. Okay, so I'm going to go through these one at a time, and if you want to, because this is, if you're watching this live, you're just going to have to roll along with me, but if you're watching this recorded, feel free to skip ahead if there's a particular question. If you have a question about number 18, you can skip ahead a few minutes. If you're watching live, you're just going to have to roll with me. The reason I'm going over these kind of verbally is because a lot of times hearing the inflection, the tone, the volume, the cadence of the instructor's voice will help you to better understand what the questions are. And I'm going to give you a little bit of clarification on a few of these and give you some study techniques that will help you in this first exam. And again, I do want to tell my Psych 101 students that the first exam is not necessarily indicative of every exam that I'm going to give you. This first exam, I'm really trying to figure out if we're pacing things correctly. Okay, so they're very superficial questions, meaning that I'm just skimming the very top of the 3 or 4 weeks that we've been meeting, and I want to make sure that you're getting the information. And if everybody does really well on this exam, I'll probably be able to go into a little bit more depth in my lectures. Because I'm expecting that you have read the topics and the supplemental material that I'm giving you, the documentaries and such, and so I'm hoping that everybody has this basic information down so that I can go more in depth and go into those tangents that everybody really enjoys, those questions that in one of my sections of 101 this semester we got off on a really nice tangent on habituation versus sensory adaptation, and kudos to that class because they got me to that fun point of just being completely baffled. And to answer the question to that group, I still have not figured out what would happen if somebody just keeps punching, and whether or not punching a wall, and whether or not their hand would become sensory adapted or habituated to the pain. I don't know yet. I've actually asked around and I've gotten multiple different answers. So great question. You have awoken me many times in the middle of the night, and I think I've got the right answer, and I don't. So good job to you guys. So let's go through these questions really quickly. Number one, psychology is defined as so again, these are multiple choice for the most part, and so you're going to have 4 different definitions. And on this one, I know that I sometimes give you the textbook definition, and then I give you my more functional definition. This one, I'm going for the textbook definition. Okay, so if you look at it in the textbook, you look at it in your notes, you look at it in the notes I've provided you, you should be able to get that one relatively easy. What are the goals of psychology? Again, this is multiple choice. So if you remember, there are 4 goals of psychology. And so you'll have 4 options that each have 4 choices, and you'll have to pick the one that has all 4. Very simple. Which choice correctly pairs a philosopher with the concept with which he is associated? Here's one where I'm just going to give you a basic test-taking tip. If I remember correctly, there are 4 options. One of them is a philosopher we haven't mentioned, and therefore I'm not trying to trick you here. I'm not trying to do a deep dive on the textbook and see if you've read the footnotes or the appendix to make sure that you're combing through the textbook and just with a fine-tooth comb. More so, I want to know that you know the big idea. So that one that you never heard of, there's a good reason you haven't heard of it because we haven't gotten to it yet. And so the other 3, I know I mentioned 2 of them kind of in passing, but there's one that I talked about over and over and over and over. And I think I've actually brought up the concept in almost every lecture. So it should jump out at you as, wow, I recognize a few of these people, but wow, I remember that concept. And as long as it matches the name, you're good to go. Okay? So, number 4, formal beginning of psychology is associated with, and on this one, I get to plead ignorant because I don't remember exactly what I'm asking here, but you can know what the potential options might be. So I might be asking for a year. And if I'm asking for a year, I hammered 1 year into your head over and over and over. And I never mentioned, I don't think, any other year in any lecture. So if it's asking for a year, you should be good there. If I'm asking for a person, The formal beginning, I talked about one person, and just to kind of give you a hint, it's the one that isn't spelled. If you're hooked on phonics, it's not spelled the way it sounds. If I'm looking for the action, you might want to look at, was it when Webster's Dictionary defined psychology, or is it when the first person opened a lab to research, or was it when the DSM was published? Which one of those sounds right? So any of those could be the options, but you should know every iteration because it's a multiple choice, so you should be able to do that one pretty easy. The building blocks of the nervous system are cells called, and again, should be pretty simple. You should be able to just look in your notes in your textbook and get the right answer. The chemicals that relay signals across the synapse between neurons are called. We hit on this so many times, and I got, in most of my lectures, I get pretty excited talking about these chemicals that are activating going through the synapse and activating the dendrite of the receiving nerve and neuron. So that one should be relatively simple. The chemicals that relay, I'm sorry, I already got that. Number 7, the branch-like fibers extending in clusters from the neuron cell body, or the soma, are called, and I just mentioned it. Rewind about 15 seconds and I gave you the answer. Wundt began operating the first psychological lab in, well, guess what? This can only be asking one of two things, the city or the year, and I don't think I mentioned the city. If I didn't, probably not the question. However, I believe I always at least say it in passing because I just love the phrasing that Wundt began operating the first psychological laboratory in 1879 in Liège, Germany. Whoops, I just gave you the answer. Which method relies on questionnaires or interviews? Oh, I'm sorry, number 9. I'm skipping around a little bit. Number 9, which descriptive research technique is correctly matched with the description? So I'm going to give you, there's 4 types, and then there's going to be a description, so which one's right? Which method relies on questionnaires or interviews? Again, you're going to be choosing from those 4 that we talked about. So if there's an option in there, like a quasi-experiment. We talked about experiments, but did we talk about quasi-experiments? No. So you know that that's not the right answer if I give you an option that we didn't talk about. The blank method uses independent and dependent variables to reveal cause and effect relationships. Boom. I'm asking for a research method, and I have the word cause in there. You should be able to get that one. Compare your forearm, hand, and fingers to a neuron in such analogy. So I know I normally do this in lecture. I normally put my hand out like this. Let me get it on the camera. And I always say that, so information's coming in here through the dendrites, and here's the soma cell body, here's the axon with the myelin sheath on it. And if I had fingers coming out my elbow, those would be the axon terminals or axon buttons, okay? So that's the analogy that I'm giving you. And so you have to identify which one is which. Electrical wires are generally protected by a tube of plastic. A similar insulating function preferred in the nervous system is, again, remember, think about that arm. Go back and look at number 12 and 13. What goes around the wire? Rewind. Should be able to figure that one out. Cocaine uses neurotransmitter dopamine to remain at the site of the synapse longer than it normally would. Cocaine thus inhibits the process called, if you check your notes, I didn't explicitly describe this, but I did explicitly describe how SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, work. So cocaine works very similar to SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That would be, we don't call cocaine a selective dopamine reuptake inhibitor, but we could, okay? Popular actor Michael J. Fox lives with Parkinson's. His symptoms include shaking and trembling, signs of a deficiency of what neurotransmitter? Again, we talked about this a lot. You should have this one. Which disorder is correctly paired with the associated neurotransmitter? So again, should be able to conquer that one. The brain and the spinal cord can constitute the blank nervous system. So we have the nervous system, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. The central is broken out into blank and blank. The peripheral is broken out into blank and blank. The central nervous system consists of the blank. The peripheral nervous system is comprised of the blank. So again, I'm asking some similar questions here over and over. That's how important it is. I'm not asking it so that you can hedge your bet and answer one way one time and one way the other, so you know you at least get 50%. This stuff is important to move on, so I'm asking it multiple times, which means you need to have this down. The two major divisions of the peripheral nervous system are the blank and blank. So again, we're hearing the same thing over and over. Focus your studies on that, okay? Getting into the second page here regarding the spinal cord's control of behavior, which statement is true? remember, the spinal cord only does one thing other than communicate with the outside world to the brain. Remember, it works on the afferent and efferent side of sensory and motor, but it does one other really cool thing. Think about it. You'll remember. The parasympathetic nervous system is comprised of, again, you should be able to conquer that one. And again, number 23 and 24, I had some people email me about this. The left and right hemispheres of the brain are connected by a bundle of fibers called, and yes, I did make a mistake here. So if you know the answer to this, boom, you're going to get double the points. And remember, this is just to help you out here. Remember, the left and right hemispheres are connected with a really dense bundle of fibers called the blank, and it allows for lateralization. It allows for communication from the left and right hemispheres back and forth. One can detect a single drop of perfume diffused in the area the size of one bedroom apartment. This is called, okay, the last lecture we did, chapter 3, sensation perception, I said there were two pairs of terms that people tend to get confused on. This is one of those pairs. So if you were paying attention to the lecture, you know it's one of those two pairs of terms. You need to be able to conquer those. And remember, I told you that most people leave the lecture thinking, oh yeah, I've got these down. I've got it. Habituation and sensory adaptation, I've got those down. Just noticeable difference between absolute threshold, I've got those down. And then when the test comes, we don't have it down. So if you have a question about that, let me know. Email me. I can set up another quick video lecture. I can set up a study group with everybody. I can set up a go-to meeting and we can all talk. Let me know because it's on the test. A snack manufacturer finds that it must increase the salt content by its chips by 8% in order for the sample of consumers to notice that the chips are saltier than they were before. This is the best illustration of the concept of, if you didn't hear me with my voice inflection on a particular word in that question, rewind, watch it again, you should be able to get the answer. Finally, number 27. This is one of these kids are doing their own thing. This one is doing its own thing. This is a short answer. I don't need an essay. I don't even really need complete sentences. If you can use graphs, if you can use pictures, if you can draw, cool, that's awesome. If you can draw the answer here, if you can make me a grid, if you can make me a box, I don't care. If you want to write paragraphs, that's cool too. The only thing I ask, please, no emojis, no LOLs. I don't want to know that you're laughing on the floor or rolling or whatever. That was completely off, but I don't want to know that you're laughing out loud. Use real words. No emoticons, okay? No smiley faces, no poopy, happy faces, whatever you might find. Identify and identify the 4 goals of psychology. Holy cow, that's probably somewhere already on the test. So use your test to help you. For each goal, use one or more concrete examples to illustrate how psychologists might pursue the goal in their research. So, helpful hint here, it is easier to take one thought or one what I would call a vignette or one example and run it through all 4 stages rather than trying to come up with a unique one for each, because to be honest, when I'm grading these, it's harder if they're all unique and I'm trying to figure out if you really understand what the concept is. So for each 4, you need to have a specific example illustration, okay? Relatively straightforward, guys. I'm hoping that this helped you out a little bit. I didn't take too much time out of your life, 15 minutes. This is about as much time as I would say you should be spending every day, maybe twice a day coming up to the exam to help you get ready. If you have any questions, remember, bmitchell@ivtech.edu, best way to get a hold of me. You can text me, 574-387-2221. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible if you text me, but let's get this finished up for my Monday, Wednesday classes. We're going to take this on Monday and then we'll review it on Wednesday. I think that's going to be beneficial for you guys for Friday. Friday, you guys are going to have, a little bit more time to study this, and then we won't be going over it until the next week, but obviously you'll get a chance there. And I will probably put up some results online like I'm doing with this podcast here, just to help you guys out. Okay? So, my hope is that this has helped you out a little bit. If it has, awesome. If it hasn't, chalk it up to 15 minutes of your life that you just contributed to your academic goals that didn't quite pan out. But I think that the more that you just kind of take and contemplate these issues and these ideas and Psych 101, the better you're going to do. So for today, I want to say thanks for listening, and I will see you all in class.